Hello, this is a TradeSite trade recap. I wanted to talk about something that we pointed out to some people today in the middle of the trading day on eBay. This is for August 21st. That is a Thursday, 2014. Before I walk you through this trade, I'm going to use bar replay mode here in eSignal to sort of walk through the day on the E-Trade. I want to talk to you about a little bit about what it requires for us to get a trade entry. You either have a chart pattern, a technical entry point based on a specific chart setup or layout or designation, or you have a candlestick pattern that gives you a very specific entry point based on the candles and the way that they're forming, or you have what we consider to be an exhaustion signal. Okay, if you don't have a technical entry point for a stock, you don't have an entry point, and therefore you shouldn't be trading. And I like to say a lot of people will put trades on and they work and they think, oh, look, I did something right. And what I always remind them is just because it worked doesn't mean you did something right. In fact, if I throw a dart at a wall with a bunch of stock symbols on it and I hit a stock symbol and I buy that stock because I hit that particular symbol on the wall, I've actually got, knowing nothing else, technically I've got a 50% chance that it's going to work. So just because I make a decision and it works doesn't mean that it was the right decision. I can run through the stop sign in my neighborhood at 11 o'clock at night, and most of the time that's probably not going to matter and not cause any issues, but that doesn't make it a good decision because it obviously can cause an issue if a car is coming the other way or if somebody's in the intersection or the cross section. So making bad decisions, we can still make those bad decisions and make money on any given trade. That doesn't teach you how to be a technical trader. So let's look today at eBay, and we're going to use bar replay mode. I'm going to walk you through the day in 5-minute bars on eBay. The reason I do this is because this was a stock today, and there's a dead day in the market. Very little volume, the lightest volume day of the year at 1.3 billion NASDAQ shares, separate from the half day before the 4th of July. It's just not a great trading environment. Nobody's around. It's summer. It's August. And this is just something that happens for a couple of weeks here this time of year. And you got to be real particular about your entries, more so than usual, because there's just lack of activity in the market in general. So let's take a look at eBay, because what happened today was eBay started trading. Here's the first 4 bars of the day. You can already see on the screen here, the first 4 5-minute bars. And I'm going to walk you through the day moving forward bar by bar. But what you'll see is word came out that eBay was going to spin off PayPal. Now, PayPal itself is a very high valued asset of the company, and when they spin them off and go public, this is going to mean a lot of money to eBay by itself. So it's kind of a big announcement. It's going to give eBay a big multiple on that component of their company. Obviously you'll have the question down the road of whether or not eBay's growth will slow without PayPal, but in the short run, it certainly is going to give them a chunk of cash, a big valuation payoff when PayPal goes public, which is now going to be in 2015. So as you can see, the stock starts to move early. Not because the news was out, but obviously somebody knew what was coming, and then the stock starts to take off. And as I expand this, here's the big move, and you can see the volume. This is when the news hit the street. Now, the funny thing is, this is our Comer tool, the count that you see on these bars, the 1 through 8 so far, green numbers. Okay, this is the startup phase of our Comer tool. We have to get to 9 bars using a specific counting criteria to lock in the startup phase of this tool. And once we get to 9, if we get to 9, and I can tell you right now, based on this big bar, we are going to get to 9. We're there right now. Once this bar is finished and the next one begins, once we have that, now you're going to start to see some pink or magenta numbers that are going to count, and they're not going to count quite the same way. You can see these 1 through 9s are consecutive. They have to be consecutive bars meeting a certain criteria. The 1 through 13 magenta numbers do not have to be consecutive. You're going to see them start back on top of part of the count that already exists. So it doesn't mean that we're going to have to go straight through to 13 to get the count. But what happens is, by completing the 9-bar green count, it's called the startup phase. It gives us the basis for energy in the stock. And one of 2 things will happen. Either just the 9-bar alone is going to kind of be a pause point. So if you look back a couple of bars into the late part of the prior session, you can see that we had a 9-bar move down. And from that point, we bounced. So in other words, that was just enough energy to sort of exhaust, in a small way, the selling on eBay to the downside, and it bounced from that point. So now we're going to have a 9-bar up complete. And let me finish this bar. You're going to hear a noise when the bar completes because the alert will sound. Okay. And now with that, you see the new pink numbers. We're already at bar 6 because it reaches back and it does some math and it counts based on a certain criteria, even includes the bars that are already complete within the 9-bar count. So we're already at bar 6. What we're looking for ultimately is a bar 13. Okay, now there's a couple ways that you use this tool. It's an exhaustion tool. If you were long eBay, if you had caught eBay on this breakout, even with before the news hit, and you're long eBay, this bar counting technique should help you stay in the trade longer because you're going to be waiting for that final exhaustion to hit. If you're not in eBay and you're looking for a short point, well, I want to say two things. First of all, we go under the theory that you never try to catch a falling safe. And if a stock was breaking down, like this one was running to the upside, that would be a falling safe or a falling knife. You don't get underneath it, generally speaking. You're not looking to be the hero and guess where the stock's going to reverse. Either you've caught the bigger, broader move or you didn't and you move on. Usually, typically, trading the opposite direction is very high risk. Having said that, if you are going to try to do it, you need a technical signal, just like I said. If you don't have a technical reason for entry, you don't have an entry point. So what we're looking for here is exhaustion on this eBay on the 5-minute chart. So I'm going to proceed. There's bar 7. This one that just completed will be bar 8. The next one, obviously, we're still heading higher. It's going to be in bar 9. Look how far eBay is moving here. Remember, this basically started down at 53.5. And now here it is at 55.5. That's a big move. But again, PayPal going public, that's going to be a big deal for eBay. And that's probably going to bring the stock higher over the next 6 months. As to how far and how soon and how the market's going to really value this once they think about it, we'll just have to see. So here's bar 10. There's bar 11 completed. And not one on that bar, but there it is, bar 12. Now, that means that the next time we get a new closing high on eBay, we're going to have an exhaustion signal. And one of the great things about this tool is once you have this much energy built in, it's usually going to wait and give you that signal. So I'm going to show you what happens here. Some people get faked into this little pullback. I'm sorry, I just jumped past it. Some people get faked into this little pullback here, okay, which it has a bar down and has another bar down, okay. But we still at this point do not have the 13 signal. Now, one more bar up, and look what this gives us. This is the new closing high. That prior bar was not. And if I go to projection mode, you're going to hear the sound. There it is. That bar, once it's complete, is the 13 sell signal. So let's go take the next bar. All right, now here's the thing to notice that's important. First of all, just because we got to the 13, there was still some momentum that carried it further. Okay, we're going to need a couple of things now that we have a potential exhaustion signal. We're going to need a way to get in, and we're also going to need a place to stop out. Now, you've got a stock that's run from $53.5 to $57. Okay, you can't just get into this stock on the short side with a 10-cent stop or anything like that. It's too small. This stock covered 50 cents in each of the last 2 bars practically. It'll swing up and back and stop you out if all you're going to do is give it a 10-cent stop. If you're trying to capture a retracement on this stock, you need to have something that gives you a little more room and flexibility. So anywhere up here that you're going to short it, if you're just going to short it based on the fact that there's the 13, your stop needs to go above the little pink line that you see right above the arrow. The arrow is the sell signal. The pink line is what's called the risk line. That's our stop. It's actually at $57.22. So if we go short anywhere, we have to be willing to ride it back up until it gets a close over $57.22. If you're not going to do that, then don't take the trade, because the only signal that you're getting here on eBay is an exhaustion signal on this time with a very specific measured stop out point based on the speed of the move. So if you're not going to give it all that, don't take the trade. There's no point. You're going to probably get stopped out if you try to set it with a 10-cent or 15, 20-cent stop. Now, what's the potential on the downside if we do stall out here? Well, I always focus on the next area back that could even potentially be support. I don't think eBay is going to retrace all the way back to the lows of the day on this news. It's solid news. So maybe back to that purple line, which is the VWAP, currently sitting around $55.40. And that line will continue to rise as long as the stock's above it. So if we get short somewhere up in here, a move back towards that 55.50 is probably about the best thing we can expect. I would consider that the ultimate goal and target on the trade. Now, where else could you get into this? Well, the other way to do it, if you didn't want to just get in here because you're worried that the momentum is so strong that it's carrying the stock higher and higher on every bar, you can also use the low of each prior 5-minute bar. So instead of just selling short on the 13, what we're going to do is we're going to let it move forward. So we got this one bar here that was up. Okay, now look at this next bar. So here what it does is we get short just above 56.50, about 56.62, I believe, would be the low of that, the white bar, when we broke it on the blue bar, okay? Because what that at least does is sort of confirm, yeah, we're starting to roll over. So that's just a little confirmational signal. You just wait for that and take the short, breaking under the low of that bar. Or some people will just take the short as soon as the 13 is printed. You can either way, that's trader's choice. But either way you're going to do it, you need to be using a stop over that pink risk line. So here's the question. Now that we're in, let's say at 56.60, the question becomes, are we going to stop out over 57.22 because the stock's going to continue to make this big move? And notice in that move, there were a couple of very short, small downward bars, but nothing big. This is the first big bar down. Volume has drifted off if you look down at the volume below on this. But it's the first indication maybe that at least there's some selling because it got a semi-big bar down on some decent volume. But nothing yet. I mean, seriously, this is still a strong stock. Let's not fool ourselves. This is a high-risk trade, and the only reason it's even a possibility right here is because we've gotten this exhaustion signal. So how does this thing play out from here? Well, the next bar is down, so that's good. It's heading in our favor. And keep in mind, we usually would take pieces of the trade off along the way. So you're not holding and letting this thing get 50 or 60 cents in the money and not taking anything off in case it goes back the other way. But keep in mind, our stop is still over 57.22. Now I'm going to jump forward through a little time here, and you can see now the momentum's definitely died off. I mean, where'd it go, right? And look at the volume dropping. Okay. Because we got that exhaustion signal. That's an institutional level exhaustion signal on this stock. And as you can see from here, we continue to drift. We never even really go back up and retest the entry point. And then we get a bar down on decent volume where maybe the buyers finally realized, oops, maybe we went a little too far at this thing for now. It does come all the way back to the VWAP at 55.58. Again, is this stock going to go all the way back to where it started? Probably not because of the PayPal story. So let's just see what happens from here. Finds a little support almost immediately, right back above the VWAP. And then is there another trading opportunity? Again, you need a technical entry point to have a trading opportunity. You need a chart pattern. Well, there's not going to be a chart pattern on this today at this point. It's already had this big move. There's not going to be any type of support and resistance setup. There's not going to probably be a candlestick formation, and those are less powerful anyway. So the only thing we had was the exhaustion signal, and we're nowhere near getting any other type of exhaustion signal. So let's just play out the rest of the day on eBay and see where it goes from here. And what you'll notice is, now remember, stocks hold above the VWAP when they're being bought by the institutions. They hold below the VWAP when they're being sold. Obviously, with the PayPal news, everybody wants the stock to stay up, and you watch that purple line, and every time it comes near it, bounces back up. They're going to definitely hold it above the VWAP, and there's the close of the day, but mostly flat with no new signals. So where was the opportunity for the day on eBay? There was one opportunity. It was the short when you got the 13 exhaustion signal, and it did work out for you. Again, it's a high-risk trade, though. There's so many better and easier ways to make money in the market, but if you don't have these types of signals, then you're not going to be able to focus on something that's giving you at least a decent percentage chance of winning on the trade. This is Chris at TradeSight. I hope you have a great trading week. Feel free to stop by our lab if you want. We can talk you through some of this stuff.